Well, hi everyone, it's Felipe here. Welcome back to the Reuse City Codesign Lab. So in order to provide more information about the context and the research activities that I did in the past, I decided to start a series of videos. They will be shorter videos. Those who know me know that I can talk about waste and reuse for hours. But I decided to make these short videos, and I'll call them fragments. And the idea is that each fragment will focus or cover one aspect of my project. And we may even use them as conversation starters to further discuss some specific topics moving forward. Again, if you are interested in joining the lab that I'm running in the month of April, please make sure to go to the website at make.reuse.city and sign up or subscribe to the lab activities. This is the first fragment that I'm sharing, and it's about how I decided to focus my research on waste prevention. And what does that mean to me more specifically? Do contact me if you want to talk about any of the things that are mentioned here. So, to start, Reuse City is a part of a research project that focuses on the open design of trusted things. This project is funded by the European Commission under the Horizon 2020 program, and it is a cooperation between the University of Northumbria in Newcastle in England and the Mozilla Foundation. There are other organizations also involved with OpenDot, a number of organizations working in issues of design research, privacy, and data security, and prototyping technologies. And the idea is to spend the 3 years since 2019 investigating different aspects of trust, Internet of Things, and open design. My specific subject is smart cities. There are a total of 5 different subjects, as I mentioned, and my one is smart cities. And I have always been really skeptical and critical of what is usually said and understood about smart cities. But when I joined this project, I was excited to see that the definition they had in their call was a very particular one. So it described smart cities by saying that technology is fundamentally changing how cities work, but these smart cities are most often determined in a top-down fashion with little transparency or accountability in how data influences the workings of the city. And in that definition, the project finished with a question: can we create cities that are not just smarter, but also kinder, fairer, and more citizen-centered? And that rang true to me. That made sense. This question made sense, and this assessment that the smart cities narrative is usually top-down and with little agency for local societies. If you go to any image search, I just made this morning on DuckDuckGo, look for images related to smart cities. This is an image that you may see. So it's usually bluish with tall buildings and bubbles or lines connecting places. And there are a lot of problems with that. One of them is that it's very rare to see people depicted in these images of cities, and they usually are adopting a perspective or a kind of imagery about cities that is pretty much, contemporary, urban, rich cities with tall buildings and a lot of infrastructure. And well, my previous experience, as you may know, I am Brazilian. I lived for about 2 decades in the south of Brazil, where I was born in Porto Alegre. And then I spent 7 years in São Paulo. And São Paulo is one of the largest cities in the world. And it is home to a number of issues, contemporary urban issues. And I think one of the very famous images that we have from São Paulo is this one. It's an aerial view of a neighborhood that is in the border of Paraisópolis, you may call it, I don't know, the Heaven City. That is that neighborhood below. And Morumbi, that is a very rich neighborhood. And there are loads of tensions, there are loads of issues about infrastructure that is absent in that low part of the city and is abundant and you may call even excessive, the amount of resources, the amount of facilities that people have in different places of the city. So I tend to see cities as places of a lot of richness and diversity, but also conflicts and inequality. And I would say that it's very rare to see those perspectives depicted in what is being said about smart cities. And what is that? So when you start delving into literature about smart cities, or what is said about smart cities in the press and in IT materials, you see often that it is related to control of data and generation of data and control by governments and by corporations. It's usually about increasing efficiency, but it's very controversial to think of efficiency, what that even means in a city. And in some cases, efficiency for one person or one organization may be generating problems for others. It's very often top-down, as was mentioned in the call for the Open Dot project. And that's also true of the view of smart cities that is being deployed both by governments and IT consultancies and some other agencies, sometimes federal or regional agencies. It's very top-down, so someone decides and the government decides that they want to transform a place into a smart city, and they're not asking the population and local organizations and businesses and small businesses and NGOs and community initiatives whether they want that view of smart cities. There is a very interesting example of a conflict that happened in Canada with the Sidewalk Labs project, and there is a very interesting production of criticism led by some organizations there. You can find more about that in materials that I will share in the notes of this video. What is understood about cities in those contexts, about smart city projects, smart city initiatives, it often ignores the legacy of urbanism and particularly of critical urban studies that try to create a kind of counter perspective against the one of those in power, and one that would include also agency for citizens. And it's interesting that there is very little discussion about citizens in smart city projects. And so another aspect of most of these IoT-centered smart city projects is that there are little benefit to people and no challenge to status quo. So in one of the publications that I also put a link to, a book by Bria Morozov and Francesca Bria, there was this argument that the cities, and particularly smart cities, are the very place of reproduction of the neoliberal way of understanding and organizing society. So there is very little challenge to that view in smart city projects. And when I started my research, I decided to confront what would that understanding of smartness be, of smart. So I would like to refuse the understanding of top-down smart cities and seek precisely what was being proposed by the Open Dot project. There are cities that are kinder, fairer, and more citizen-centered. There is one discussion that could be made about smart as a term, and there is a lot of critical production being made about that. There are some very interesting discussions, and to my understanding, being a non-native English speaker, we would usually translate smart as esperto to Portuguese. In esperto, I would put it more related to clever in English than to intelligent. And esperto can also have, in Portuguese at least, I wouldn't say a negative connotation, but one that is kind of agnostic to good or bad. So esperto, being smart in that sense, being esperto, is kind of instrumental way of surviving or making a living that does not put a lot of attention into ethical or moral issues. And this is something that I would like to revert. I do understand that smart cities bring a lot of influence from smartphones, and there was this construction, this narrative of smartphones being having more features than dumb phones or feature phones. And smart cities would be cities that are augmented by internet and digital technologies, but I don't think I like particularly the very idea of smart. So where do we see smart cities being deployed? So these are some of the areas in which many projects that call themselves smart cities focus. It's traffic control in public transport. There is a lot about lighting. There is policing and surveillance and public safety. There are some that focus on access with Wi-Fi networks for citizens that connect somehow to digital inclusion. Some smart city projects focus on energy management. Others have sensors to generate data about environmental issues. Others handle public inventory, tracking assets, and sometimes, very, very rarely, maintenance. And finally, there are some smart city projects that focus a bit on waste management. And that connects a bit with what I would want to focus on. But what is usually discussed about waste management in smart cities? Again, it's often a perspective that comes from companies and governments. You have examples of smart bins, talking about collection of waste in a more efficient way. And it's often about making waste disappear as quickly as possible, disappear from public eyes. There is very little citizen agency, there is very little public discussion with citizens and with citizen organizations or community organizations about waste management in smart cities. And its end goal seems to always be to increase recycling, to increase the amount of discarded materials that end up in recycling. But those who are coming from a background on zero waste or even a larger environmental studies or environmental fields will remember that there is this very well-known argument that we should reduce, reuse, and recycle. And even though waste management in smart cities usually focuses only on recycling, we should remember that this is not those three measures to promote more sustainable living in cities are not all in the same level. We should first reduce, then reuse, and in the end recycle. And it's not even that public waste management initiatives usually focus on recycling, landfilling, and incineration. And all of those three, including recycling, they are costly. They are not always the most beneficial solution for waste in terms, both in economic as well as social and environmental terms. And they are often polluting themselves, even recycling. And I know for some of you that's not new, but it's not everybody knows that recycling is costly. It's not that effective in reusing materials or putting materials back to use, and it is often polluting. So what I decided I should focus my research in was mostly on reuse. And that, for those of you who know me, comes as no surprise because I have been involved with projects that are in the field of reuse for some time now, for well over a decade, almost 2 decades, to be honest. And so we had projects in Brazil that would receive donations of computers, of discarded computers, and would refurbish them, deliver them to social projects or to different social communities. And that has been the focus of many of the projects I did in the past. I have also investigated possible connections between recycling or reuse of materials and digital making and traditional crafts. And I have explored repair in different contexts, both in a more academic and conceptual way, as well as in community projects. So I came to this focus of my research, and even though I could, in any case, focus my critical perspective of smart cities in any of those topics that are usually subject to smart city projects, I could focus on public surveillance. There's a lot of critical research being done about surveillance in smart cities. I could focus on lighting. I could focus on digital inclusion or public networks. But I decided to to put together my previous experience with reuse and repair and smart cities. So I came to focus my research in waste management. But as I mentioned, I'm not really interested in increasing the efficiency of waste collection. I'm not necessarily interested in increasing the amount of waste that is being collected and sent to recycling or to landfilling or to incineration, but I would like to focus on waste prevention. And this has been the focus of my research since perhaps some months into the Open Dot project in 2019. And since then, I did some research activities that I will describe in another video. So for now, thank you for watching this. I hope to discuss more of these issues. There is a lot more to discuss about this critical perspective on smart cities. There is a lot more to discuss about the etymology of smart and how that leaks into public initiatives and governments. There is a lot more to discuss about reduce, reuse, and recycling and repair. And I hope that we can do some of those discussions during this lab now in April. So everyone, please be welcome to register, to subscribe, or to sign up to my research activity right now. Go into make.reuse.city, and I hope to see you all soon. Bye for now.